and I are kind of similar. You may even be more good-hearted than me. I feel like you. Well,
but in our longing hearts, we're all the same.
Mutual respect and
Yes.
a boundary might have been crossed that you, right? So just an example of, it is a great example. I appreciate that for giving me the example to even quote them.
Let's be the change we want to see.
I've never seen difference as negative. I've always been attracted to and intrigued by it. But we're looking for, how are we similar? How are we the same? How can we all just get along?
We are links in a chain. Unimportant.
Hey!
What's up, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are tuning in from. This is Working It Out Across Generations, another episode within our third season. I'm Justin.
And I am Dr. Lynne.
And here we talk all things conflict, big and small, and how they are honestly playing a role in our everyday functioning as a society. Being that we have a conflict resolution background, professionally, we also try to give out some tips for reconciliation for future endeavors. Now, today we have a really, really good episode. And we have a very, very special guest with us today. She is family. She is exceptional as her own person, and we will intro her in a few. And we are really talking today about whether or not depression is real or an excuse. I think at the end of the day, we're in a very trying time right now, very sensitive time right now, and have been for quite a little bit. And I think that naturally a lot of feelings are coming up for a lot of people, and yet, as we've talked about in other episodes, and you'll probably hear a little bit of it today, right? Not everyone has the same space to talk about those things, right? Letting things fester, letting things build up, and that can show up in forms of depression, anxiety, etc. And so there's still so much of, at least from what I've heard, the conversation or the talking point around, like, I'm fine or whatever. Like, why would I, pay someone to talk about all the things going on in my life and what I'm feeling, right? And I think that just goes to show that as an approach, right, to these kinds of conversations, we do have honestly some negative and honestly, I would even say toxicity around mental health and mental health support. There's still a lot of shame that goes out here, especially as a motivator, right? And so there's so many different things within this topic that we are going to cover naturally in this amazing conversation. And I'm going to toss it to Dr. Lynne to introduce our amazing guest, who is just going to bless all of our presence.
Yeah, thank you. Do you notice how we say we have a good episode every episode? Because we do. We enjoy our episodes. I think this one is timely, though, really, really timely, because we're hearing more and more about people saying that they're depressed. We're hearing people who don't believe it, right, either. And we are experiencing, as you said, really trying and difficult times. And we thought this is a topic that we need to bring to the forefront. And who better to have the conversation with than Lausell Bryant, PhD, MSW. Dr. Lausell Bryant is Associate Dean for Academic Affairs, Clinical Professor, Master Teacher, yes, and
Sounds right. Sounds right.
And the Catherine and Howard Abel Executive in Residence at NYU Silver. Dr. Lausell Bryant's professional interests focus on research and practice issues related to developing the leadership capacities of social workers and other human services professionals. The intersection of race, ethnicity, and social justice, models for developing parenting skills among teen parents, the use of self in management and leadership roles, and the role of spirituality in mental health and adolescent development. These are the places that she exceptionally shines in and focuses on. Dr. Lausell Bryant's career spans 36 years I think she started actually before that. I think she was helping around the little kids around the neighborhood. But her career, her professional career spans 36 years in youth services in both the private and public sectors. She is an author. Yes, and I know she'll tell us about her books and where you can get those books. But we want to bring her on and let her tell you all more about herself. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Linda Lausell Bryant.
What's up, TT? All right, so family, this is family. So y'all are gonna say like Dr. Linda and stuff. I'm gonna say Dr. TT.
Dr. TT, that works.
I gotta get formal with it, right? But we are family here. These are conversations we have, all the time as a family. So if anything, we're just glad to bring you onto another platform to show exactly who you are and how you shine. So it's an honor to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, yes. Thank you so much for being here. Love for you to tell the audience what you want them to know about you.
Oh, love that question. So I just want to say what a privilege to be here. And since we are amongst family, I just want to say hello, fam.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. So what do I want you to know about me? Okay, separate and apart from all of those things that Lynne read from the official bio, which none of really captures who I am as a person. I am a first generation college graduate in my family. I am a second generation Puerto Rican woman, meaning the second generation born in the mainland United States. Grandma and grandpa came here as teenagers back in the late 1920s, hoping to make a better life for them and their families. I am a mom of one biological child and 6 stepchildren. And I really want to contribute to a world in which we can give each other and ourselves some grace. And that comes from a place in which I didn't learn how to do that. And I am still trying to learn how to give myself some grace. I don't know that anyone can ride me harder than I ride myself. And I am really trying to learn. And I don't want to get Lynne and Naeem started because they'll tell you some stories, right? But I am trying to learn to give myself some grace. So what I'm hoping we will be able to talk about today is in part the role of giving ourselves grace when it comes to dealing with the issue of depression. And also putting depression in a context. Right? Depression doesn't just happen in isolation. It happens in a context. So we'll talk about what's going on in your environment and what's going on in the larger environment that could be contributing to that.
I think that's so amazing. And, I think that grace, right? That's so not an easy thing to learn, to reinforce, clearly, because it's not something in the masses that's reinforced and nurtured especially in a positive way. And so I think that that's such a great direction that we want to go in with this conversation, in which I've got our first question. It's kind of a 2-parter. So here we go.
Before you go, I have to do this, please. We're in the United States. I got to shout out Puerto Rico after that disgusting display that was at Madison Square Garden. Shout out Puerto Rico and Puerto Ricans. We love you. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It is so present with me right now. We could do a whole conversation on rage becoming depression. Because I felt so triggered by those comments and so enraged. And without really being able to have an appropriate outlet, because the things I want to do, I cannot legally do. But without having an appropriate outlet for it, it felt like I could just go into a fetal position and just try to disappear for a while.
Wow.
Right. Because it is also not, those comments were not isolated
Yeah.
in my whole life experience, right? And I'm sure
Mhm.
anybody here who's watching this, who's a person of color or a member of a marginalized group, you know that these are not isolated
Right.
events, and that there's a wound on the inside, a well-worn wound. And when it gets poked again and again and again, it never can close or heal. It's always oozing because it's always getting poked.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
And that is how I felt with those comments. But I digress. I'm going to try to like take a deep breath because we could go there. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but I could not say it. I had
Thank
to,
you.
yeah. So please.
Alrighty. I second those. It wasn't in our itinerary. So I didn't know that was coming. So that makes it even better. So present, so real, and thank you for that. So here we go, I hope. How would you define depression? And as I said, two-parter. So start there. And within that, do you think we are all depressed in some way? Is that something that's, a crazy statement, not a crazy, define depression for us, and do you think it's in us, all of us, in some way, shape, or form?
Okay. Love that second part of the question.
Yeah.
But let me start at the beginning. So depression is a condition. Okay. In some medical books, they would be referred to as a disorder, right? And let's not take that too personally. It just means something we need to pay attention to. Right. So it's a condition in which your mood is affected. Your mood is affected by, and is characterized by feelings of sadness or feelings of numbness, of flatness, where you almost feel like not much of anything. So think of it as, if we were going to give a metaphor, it would be like suddenly having no appetite. Right. So in that way, it's different from the norm.
Right.
But what makes it a condition is when it is not a one-day thing, right?
No.
It's lasting a few weeks, maybe longer, and it begins to affect aspects of your life, right? Because moods come and go. You're up, you're down, you eat a chocolate bar, you're like, woo, I'm feeling great. You have a cup of coffee, you're like feeling energized. So moods are variable, but this would be a prolonged mood state in which you are down or flat. Okay, so that's one part of it, but it's also affecting your life. And in what ways might it affect your life? Think of it as a lack of appetite for life. You're just kind of like, I don't feel like engaging in my normal activities.
Right.
I just can't seem to feel the energy to deal with my normal activities. Or it's affecting your sleep, or affecting your literal appetite, where you don't really even feel like you want to eat.
Right.
Okay. You don't want to engage in normal activities that traditionally have brought you a level of satisfaction or even joy.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So that's how you know that we're not just talking about the day-to-day momentary shifts in moods, right? But it's something more. Now, back to your question, Naeem, about whether we all, and if you could just ask the question again, do we all have
Do you think that it all shows up in all of us? Like, do you think that there are people who, because there are people who say, like, I'm not depressed, or I can't be depressed, or I've never been depressed, right? Never gotten to that point.
Right.
Do you think that, just as human beings, right, that it can show up in all of us?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it can absolutely show up periodically in human beings at all and any time. And let's go back to the issue of context we were talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say in your particular life, you lose a loved one or a dear person. There would be a normal experience of sadness, of loss, maybe a sense of emptiness from the loss.
Right.
It can also extend and be prolonged to begin to affect you in some of the ways we talked about, right? And so that could be an example of someone then experiencing depression more as a condition rather than
Mhm.
as a temporary mood state.
Right.
Mhm.
But we can also be impacted by things that are not in our immediate life, but it's just around us. So you take the world we're living in right now, in which people seem very polarized. There's a lot of
Mhm.
tension. There's a lot of vitriol coming out of
Yeah.
places. That can be something that affects us all, and we're not even aware, right? Because we're thinking like, yes, that's going on out there. But when you're taking in a steady diet of negativity, that could begin to creep in. And suddenly it feels like there's not a lot of hope or things are really negative.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that could affect us as well.
Yeah.
So we want to recognize that shifts in moods are part of the human experience.
Right.
And what we want to be vigilant to is what's the impact on your life?
Mm.
What's the impact on your functioning? And only we can answer that, right? Only we can answer that. But when we think about answering that question, I also want us to remember that our voices are not the only ones in our heads.
Right. There's other people.
There's
Yeah.
other people weighing in on
Well,
that.
that's right,
Yes,
including starting from people who raised us, right?
absolutely.
So much, I think, is of whether or not we can even say, own, be aware of us being depressed is starts with how the folks who raised us really either ignored it or actually talked about it. No, in my generation, people didn't say they were depressed. There's no way that they were going to talk about it. If anything, they, everybody had a nervous breakdown. Not everybody, but the only thing I ever heard growing up was a nervous breakdown. I never
Mhm.
heard I'm depressed or somebody's depressed, or even a question, you look like you're depressed. Are you depressed? Like that didn't exist.
Right.
But to piggyback off of Justin's question is, uh, just the where we are in the world. You talked about like where we are, everything. It's not even like it's just here in the United States, it's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Do you think that we're all maybe depressed in some way?
I think that if you think about some of the rhetoric we have grown up hearing about our country, land of opportunity, if you can make it, here, you can make it anywhere. Like there's so much of that we have grown up taking in.
Mhm.
And even if it didn't seem to be playing out exactly that way in your life, there was this belief that those opportunities are out there, right? You're going to have to figure out how to get, but they're there. When we see things going on the way they're going on right now, it's almost kind of like maybe there isn't a lot of hope anywhere.
Hmm.
You hear people talking right now like, oh my goodness, I may have to like leave this country, but where are you going?
Where will I go?
Where are
Right.
you going where it's really where you think it's going to be better, right?
Mm-hmm.
We see authoritarianism on the rise across the world. I think these things are affecting us in the sense of like, are we in some period of like decline? Is the world just kind of going to hell in a handbasket, so to speak, right? Is that happening?
That's an old school phrase.
It ain't hard.
I know.
It ain't hard.
Going to hell in a
So
handbasket.
I didn't really need the. I appreciate it, but I can feel the generational shift in
Yeah. Yes.
So,
Yes.
continue.
Right. So yeah. So I think that any healthy human person would look at the state of the world
Right.
and minimally have concern,
Right.
but possibly really feel like this is dark. This is messed up. This is downright depressing.
Yeah.
Right? What about the world we're leaving to our children? This idea of like to our younger loved ones, what are they going to have to deal with and inherit
Yeah.
when we are gone?
Yeah.
Right. So those are things that, being very candid, that gets me down. That gets me down. I'm not seeing the kind of hope that I want to see on the horizon, and I have to fight very actively to not let that just get a whole grip on me.
Yeah.
And the fact that I do have to spend time trying to not let that happen also takes energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so it takes energy to survive things that are going on in the world and in your life. And then it takes energy to not let everything that's going on
Mm-hmm.
kind of come in and weigh you down in addition.
Right.
So then your energy feels depleted, leaving less energy for the things you want to do.
Yeah.
Right. And that can be experienced as a sense of depression as well.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
just I just don't have the bandwidth. I
Yeah.
just it's too much. It's too
Yeah.
much. I can't deal.
Yeah.
And at that
I'm
point,
hearing that a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
at that point, another part of it is, talking about energy and depletion of energy, right? You talked about grace. That in itself, because it's not a nurtured message in the masses, being okay with possibly something being whack right now, dark, right? And that your responses to that are normal.
Right.
That at that point, it feels like you're already burnt out, but you're like burning out in burnout, right? You're too burnt out to even burn out even more. And
Right.
so I just acknowledging the processes of these things, right? The stages of these things.
Yeah.
That grace period, I know for sure, is something that I know I struggle with personally, but I know so many other people struggle with. Just allowing themselves to feel okay and just the natural human responses to these very, very
Yeah.
traumatizing things that
Yes.
we've allowed to, as we
Mhm.
talked about, become culture. So
Yeah.
we're questioning constantly, and questioning takes energy in itself. So acceptance is a whole other
Mm.
ball game, and that's
Sure.
a whole different thing that I've seen people get wrapped up in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I love that. I love where we're going.
Yeah. We're metabolizing everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Right. So imagine if you are eating a meal and your body needs to metabolize that. That takes energy. But imagine if someone's like force feeding you, right? Or if you're in one of those hot dog eating contests where you're just like,
Mhm.
and that's what the world can feel like with
Yes.
the news. We're being bombarded with so much.
Mhm.
There's climate change. There's what's going on politically. Like there's all of these things, and it can feel kind of like I can't even digest all of that. Like it's too much. It's coming at me too fast. We all have to adapt to changes, but when it comes at a pace that you can't even take in, that throws us
Yeah.
into a place where we're just like, I just need to retreat from that.
Yeah.
It's too much. I just need to retreat. That can also lead to a sense of depression.
Mhm.
Right? I am overwhelmed and I need to pull back. I need to retreat into myself. So now you may be less social, less willing to connect with other people. You may isolate yourself. And the irony is the very thing you need to get through that, human connection, is the thing that you pull away from. So there,
That's happening more and more
that is happening
ever
more.
since COVID. Yeah. That's happening more and more. I I think part of what happens too that's a problem is number one, I'll own it. People like me who go, stop watching the news. Like, why are you watching the news every day? First thing you wake up, you're ingesting the news. I understand it's problematic when I say that, and I say it to you because you and
Yeah.
my sister, y'all
Yeah.
love to wake up to the news, which hasn't changed
Y'all go to
really.
sleep to the news.
Yeah, that too.
Right.
That
Why
too.
y'all getting
Sleep and wake up to it.
Right.
Sleep to the news.
Yeah.
It's like, but the other thing that's problematic, and I don't know if you've ever interacted with people like this, but people who honestly don't believe in depression, they believe that you're saying that as an excuse to get out of doing what you need to do. Get up, go to work, smile at people, make it a great day,
Yes.
give it to God and just, keep it going.
Right.
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 Have you ever interacted with people who
Yes.
believe in that?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think that, we live in a world where everyone's got an opinion on everything, right? And so that's one thing. But I would say like the most significant thing here is the cultural lens through which we look at issues of health or wellness and sickness. Okay. Without realizing that that's a continuum. It's not two extreme poles, but it's actually a continuum.
Yes.
And that we bounce around that continuum day to day, minute to minute, hour to hour. Right? How many times have you woken up and you're like, I'm good today? Right? By the time the day has finished putting you through the grinder, you were not good. You come home and you're like, I went out there strong, I gave it, and it kicked my ass.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm coming back and I got nothing.
Yeah.
I got nothing. Where is the bed? I just need to be one with that mattress and those sheets. And I just need to disappear.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one, I want people to think about wellness and not wellness as a continuum. And we want to work to keep ourselves more on this side, but to also understand that we are susceptible to things in our environment that will shift us at times.
Yeah.
And what we are trying to not get to is a place where we are in a total state of unwellness, right? Which will then lead to other physical issues and complications, or really disrupt our lives, really take us out of the game of life, right? Of being able to engage in it. Okay, so let's think about some of those cultural messages. As a Puerto Rican, let me back up and set it up this way.
Okay.
People, particularly people of color, or people who have been through some stuff in their lives, not just one person, one family, but I'm talking about groups of people throughout generations. So you think of the Black experience, right? You think of the Latina experience. You think about the LGBT experience, where people have been through repeated dehumanization, discrimination, like everything is an uphill climb.
Right.
I can understand a perspective that says, hey, don't cry. Shrug it off, because we have learned and we have had to be strong to survive.
Right.
So there is a concern that if we let that down, we're really going to be in trouble, because the world is never going to be kind or easy for us.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It's coming from a protective and an adaptive place to keep us surviving. Right? When our ancestors were on the run in the Underground Railroad, there was no time. There was barely time to weep. You weep and run at the same time. Like, there was no time.
That's right. Harriet Tubman said, I'll shoot you, but you're not going back and you're not quitting.
Right. You're freaking out. I'll have to take you out, right? Because we got to go. We got to survive. So we need to also appreciate the burden of survival.
Yeah.
That can become the driving force of your life. I live with this mindset of survival. I got to survive. I got to survive this day. I got to survive this job. I got to survive this office where people are microaggressing me day in and day out, minute by minute. I have to survive. It's exhausting. And exhaustion is also connected to depression, right? We talked about that depletion of energy. So we need a way in which we feel that it is legitimate to allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. And that when we feel that it's legitimate, we can give ourselves permission. And so I like to look at giving ourselves that grace as part of our survival strategies.
Okay.
Because if all of our energy is going into the survival battle and we're always in battle mode, we may survive for a time, but there's going to be a cost to that. And it usually shows up in depression, which leads us to maybe not keep up with our routine medical appointments and checkups, which then leads to things brewing that don't get identified. until they are a major problem.
Yeah.
Okay, because it is going to show up somewhere,
Yeah.
somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in things that we don't think is even like serious. Like, oh yeah, I just can't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just no, I've never been a good sleeper.
Right.
I have trouble going to the bathroom. Well, it's just, whatever. That's just my grandmother had bowel issues. Yeah,
Mm.
like we dismiss those things, right? But
Ah.
your body is telling you, I'm struggling to even handle my most basic functions
Mm.
that you need. All of those things are essential to you being able to continue functioning, right? So the grace is one, we're human. Yes, we have had to survive things like we were superhumans,
Right.
right? And under those circumstances, we have risen to that.
Right.
But we are human.
Mm-hmm.
We actually are not superhuman.
Right.
And when we continue to push ourselves to act as though we are superhuman, we're going to experience the damage and the impact to that, to our humanness,
Mm-hmm.
physically, emotionally, psychologically. So grace and understanding that you must, in the big scheme of surviving, your well-being is something you must attend to.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And yes, you are still in a struggle. There's no doubt about it. But you are not in the woods with dogs coming to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And someone with a shotgun aiming for you. You are not in that place, but emotionally it may feel that.
Right.
And you want to give yourself some grace for that too. To recognize that trauma makes you feel like you're still there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That is what trauma does.
Mm.
You are still like, there's a gun right to my head right now,
Yeah.
right? Even though it's no longer literally at your head, emotionally you experience it
Mm-hmm.
that way,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
right? All the more reason to give you grace, all the more reason to take grace. And if you have a spiritual framework, right, which can be a great help in times like this, if
Right.
there's a spiritual framework that supports the idea of giving yourself grace, try to cultivate that.
Mm-hmm.
Read more on that. Try to talk to people who share that perspective. Try to try to create within you um, a loving, supportive person.
Mm.
My hope is that everyone can at least identify one person who is that person
Right.
in life.
Right.
If you are in a place where that's not the case, I would want you to literally create that for yourself. It could be another you
Mm-hmm.
that is doing that. You can bring in someone who's no longer on the planet where you experience that, an ancestor who, a grandparent, an aunt, someone who, friend who gave you that, and you can bring them into your psychological space
Yeah.
to speak to you and allow you to give yourself
Mm.
some grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are all survival tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. When we were running and not knowing if we were going to get to some safe place, we had to hold on to something,
Yeah.
a vision, an image,
Yeah.
right? A dream, a hope, a star in the sky, whatever we needed to do to help us keep going. So I want to ask people, what is that for you? What can that be
Mm-hmm.
for you, especially in a world as it is right now,
Right.
where things feel harder, less hopeful, darker? We all need that grace. Okay. And if you're tuning in today, like, I hope that knowing that we're having this conversation is of some comfort, because I can tell you that the three of us on this screen right now have all dealt with this. And I am not talking like, oh, 20 years ago. I'm
Right.
talking about last Tuesday. I'm talking
Dude,
about
Yes, I call myself high functioning depressed.
I know I am.
yes,
I
we
built my
are
career off of
functioning right,
yeah.
right. Or closeted depressed people, right?
Mhm,
Because
right,
no one can see it, but we know we're carrying it,
right.
Yeah.
right? No one can see it because we are smiling. We seem put together. We're showing up to work, but nobody knows. Like when you sat up in the bed in the morning, like where you were just like, can I do this today?
Yeah,
Can I get out of this bed and can I go
yeah,
and fight the good fight today? Do I have anything left in me to do that?
right.
Right. And that is when we are living in a world that is this sick, honestly.
Hmm.
It is not crazy to be reacting to that
That's right.
and
Yeah.
to be affected by that. In
Yeah.
fact, that's a sign that actually you're quite
Oh,
well.
that's
And that you're
right.
intact.
Yeah,
Right now.
yeah,
You are tapped into your
Right
emotions.
now.
yeah.
You are, and yeah,
Yes.
I think that's
Yes.
amazing. And I
Yes.
think this is already seeping into kind of the next question that I have for you. In that, are you finding that, especially, we talked about your personal, but even professionally, wherever, right, that different generations are experiencing depression differently, handling depression differently? Is there kind of maybe similar things that different generations have kind of kept up for I guess teaching purposes of passing it on to the next,
Mhm.
right? How are you finding depression showing up in different generations?
Okay, I'm gonna generalize a little bit here, right? And then maybe we can get
Yeah.
a little more specific. But generally speaking, I'm gonna say folks 50 and up, right? But it could be in 40s as well,
Mhm.
are aiming more for spiritual support.
Okay.
Okay. And it may be because we are closer to generations that grew up in a world where spirituality was practiced more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They were members of churches or synagogues or mosques, like where that was just more common. It was more common within the broader culture.
Yeah. But you
That
were also forced to go
and
to
yes,
as a part
yes,
of the culture.
as
Yeah.
part of the culture, exactly. So you're familiar with that,
Mhm.
right? And you've had this model of your ancestors saying, this is where we need to go because
Right.
these things are like not good.
Right.
So we need to go pray. We need to go right. What?
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
So I see that, and then I see younger generations, 30s and younger,
Mhm.
who are, it seems to me, really bearing the biggest brunt of this
Mm.
because they are just coming of age to understand the world, and they're like, this is a mess. And I don't know, like, am I going to be okay? Am I going to be able to get a job? Am I going to be able to get an apartment? Like it's like they are literally worried about, like, is there a place in this world for me?
Mhm.
Is there hope for a future? So that becomes, and it often shows up as depression. It's an existential crisis. Like, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, how I'm supposed to survive, how I'm supposed to make it. Okay. And thanks to many economic forces, people are working so much, not just physically, even when they're physically home, they're like working.
Yeah.
And we're all less available to just connect.
Mm.
We're less available to sit down and have dinner. I mean, that is almost like a relic of the past, a family dinner hour,
Mhm.
right? We all have these different schedules that are dictated
Right.
by our different job demands.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? We do live in a 24/7 economy. So people are working
Mhm.
all kinds of
Mhm.
we're not like, oh, everybody's on 9 to 5. Everybody's not on 9 to 5.
No.
Right. And even people who supposedly are 9 to 5 are really like 9 to 9, 9 to 8, they're getting home later. So there's less opportunity for that connection and sense of community. And I think that's something that's depressing, like most of us. The sense of community is lost. We have fragmented, if we're lucky, maybe you have a community at work. And so that exists there. But then when you get home, nobody's home. Right? And so maybe you don't have that sense of community there. So it's just these are all things that make things more difficult for younger people who are trying to figure out what are the rules of this world? How do I advance? How do I get ahead? How do I make progress in this? And why are these older people, why have they effed up the world in this way? Why have they done this?
Right.
Right? And now they're angry, which, listen, you look at the way this they look, I can't blame younger people. I cannot blame younger people for being angry. But where does that anger go? And one of the phrases we use when we talk about depression is that it is anger turned inward.
Yeah.
Right? That it's anger that doesn't have a place to go. So you just like suck it up and it converts into this profound sadness on the inside.
Yeah. Wow.
So I see, again, I'm speaking in broad generalities.
Yeah,
But it makes sense. It sounds
Yes.
right to me. I don't know, to you with the younger folks. Yeah.
Yeah, we're angry. We're annoyed. And I've brought it up many times to, being the, as you know, youngest person in the room, especially professionally with what we do. I give respect to any adult who, can hear a young person, telling them what it is about, our experience on this shared soil, right? And the fact that I've said, bro, you've left us dog crap to clean up, right? And it's on us, right, to not, keep up the whole like reality TV stuff as far as where the anger goes, right? And all these different things, right? Social media, that's on us. But I've fully been able to say confidently to some adults, a lot of adults, just like, what have you been doing all this time, right? Like, what have you been feeling all this time? And it's really, really interesting how much, I guess people think they can't or don't or aren't allowed to feel when it comes to this part of the conversation as a contributor to how society functions. So we all got a role in this. We all have stuff to hold, weight to hold, and we got to lift as we climb. And we got to get, I think, a little bit more honest, straight up, real, and giving grace in all of that for what we've done with it, while also game planning or blueprinting future strategies, tools, and all these different things. So
yeah. So we in this last 5 minutes, right? We're giving it to you, Dr. Lindo. Can you give us 2 important takeaways for people?
Okay. I want to cite and then expand on Audre Lorde, who said, self-care, and I want to make sure I get her quote right. I may mess it up, but self-care is an act. Self-care or self-preservation is not an act of indulgence. I was taught that was an act of indulgence. Don't be soft. Selfish. Stop babying yourself. Buck up. Suck it up. Okay. Self-care is not an act of indulgence. It is an act of political warfare. And when we say political warfare, that's language like, whoa, like, what are we getting revolutionary here? Yes, but with a small r. Okay. We're talking about a revolution in the way in which we think about taking better care of ourselves. which first begins with allowing space, grace and space for it. Okay. It's an act of warfare in the sense that you are fighting against everything that is trying to suppress your humanity. You're human. That means you are physically, you have needs, you have things that are fragile in your physical system. Care is essential, right? We're not Mack trucks. We're not made of steel and iron, and we have to take care in order to keep functioning. And there was a time that many of our ancestors, that wasn't an option. They lived lives where they were done at 30. They were gone, 30, 35, right? Now, we are engaged in survival, but survival is the minimum standard. It is not the destination. It's just the prerequisite to the destination. So we want to shift our goalpost from survival to thriving.
Yeah.
Being whatever the conditions are, being able to be healthy, whole, connected, so that we can continue the race, not just for ourselves, but for future generations, right? So that we won't die out as an individual ahead of time, and we won't die out as a people ahead of time. So get connected. I want to encourage us all. And I tell this to myself when I am being incredibly abusive of my limits. And it is abusive because I would never do this to somebody else.
Yes.
But I do it, right? When I'm like, okay, I can stay up till 3 a.m. to finish this, knowing damn well that at 61, that I am going to pay a price for that. When I do that, I have to remind myself that that is not only harmful to me, but I am complicit with everyone who wants to oppress me and everyone who may want to take me out. I'm going along with that. I'm participating in my own dehumanization. I am doing it. And that's not okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because I have children and loved ones who don't want to see me taken out before time.
That's good.
And I got work to do. I got work to do. So who am I prioritizing? What am I prioritizing? Am I really honoring my values? Is this what my ancestors wanted? Is this what they bled and died for? So that I could take myself out?
Right.
I don't think so. I think my grandmother would come down and slap my face and say, cut it out. And I think my mom, while on earth, she may have said, stop crying, suck it up, would say, hey, I've learned.
Right.
I see it differently now. You cut that crap out and you take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Don't come join me ahead of time because I'll really slap you. Okay. So let's remember that survival is a means to an end. It's not the end.
Yeah.
That's not the goal. That's just a prerequisite for the goal.
Beautiful.
So I would leave us all with that. I'm not going to leave you with that. I'm going to leave us with that, myself included.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm on this journey with all of you.
Oh gosh, that was so good. You left us with so many gems. So add a couple of more in telling us your books.
Okay.
Tell us your books, and then we'll tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay. So all of my books can be found on Amazon, but the most recent one is called Transforming Careers in Mental Health for BIPOC, Strategies for Healing and Social Change. And it is a volume that has 29 chapters, different mental health professionals contributing to this, talking about the ways in which they are struggling to figure out, or in some cases have figured out, how to survive and thrive and advance the work in their jobs. Right? How do they stay true to themselves? How do they take care of themselves? How do they try to create work environments that are less abusive, that are less toxic for people, ways in which they try to do what you all are doing here. And I just have to give you a shout out for this, because this is critical to ameliorating depression as like the common experience that it is. We need one another. We cannot do this alone.
Right.
We
Yeah.
cannot talk survival. We cannot talk thriving in our own little bubble. It
No.
must be done in community,
Yes.
right? And I'm going to define community. Community could be two people and you can grow from there, but community,
Yes.
not alone.
Yes.
Let's really try to break some of that isolation. And you all are bringing real conversations. For anyone who doesn't get to a church or a synagogue or a mosque, there's this show.
Yes. Thank
And
you.
it is a place of community, and
Yes.
it is a place of wisdom and truth. And I honor this work that you are doing. And I consider it a privilege to be able to be part of it in any way, because this is an important forum and space that you are creating for all of us to learn how to give each other more grace.
Thank you.
It's
So if you
amazing.
just look up my name on Amazon, you'll see the various books there. And I'm just wishing all of us the strength to give ourselves some grace, the strength to not be so strong every minute of every day.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. I mean, you just blessed all of us with just you and your brain and your heart. And yeah, we're all learning here. We're all figuring this out.
We
So
are all living here.
I do have to wrap this up, unfortunately, and I'm going to do it because I know y'all are close. And if y'all do it, y'all will go on to the next show. So if you want to see more of Working Out Across Generations, go to e360tv.com, Trajectory Channel, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV.
Watch us on your big screen.
Yes. Go to Facebook.com, Working It Out TV show, YouTube, Working It Out Across Generations. If you want to connect with Dr. Linda Lausell Bryant, you can find her on X at Lausell Linda, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Dr. Linda Lausell Bryant. Also on Facebook at Linda Bryant. I mean, this is what we do. As we've said, this is who we are, what we do, and we just appreciate any single person who has given us a follow, a like, a share, a comment, subscription, any of it. Small is all here. It all adds up, and it already has in tremendous ways. You know what we say about conflict. Conflict is here to teach you something about yourself. So go out there and find out what that is. This is Working It Out Across Generations with Dr. Linda Lausell Bryant. I'm Justin.
And I'm Dr. Lynne.
Thanks so much. And we'll see you soon.
We love you.